What's up, my BBs? Welcome to my first podcast where, wow, this sound is not that great in my ears at least. Starting this off well. So, basically, this podcast, I am calling it Here's the Tea because I usually start sentences like that, even when I'm in therapy. She'll ask me what's been going on, and I'll be like, all right, so here's the tea. And so I'm just going to be telling maybe some stories. I'll be ranting about stuff. I'm not really sure what this podcast will be, but I thought I'd just test the waters with podcasts, see if I can talk and maintain a conversation with myself, I guess. So today's podcast is going to be something that I get questioned on a lot. It's something I've talked about a lot, and that is my sobriety and mental health journey. So I am approaching 6 months sober. Woohoo! It's incredible. I can't believe it. And today I actually went to my psychiatrist and she asked me a question. She asked me like what I learned about myself in this past 6 months after everything that I've gone through. And she asked it in such like an interview type way, and I literally said I feel like I'm being interviewed. And I realized I was giving her my answer, and I realized I could say so much. And like she cut me off like after a little bit because she's like, that's great, blah blah blah. But so I thought I'd just give some of that information. So this podcast is just going to be what I've learned about myself in the past 6 months. So I'm just going to jump right into it, as I always say. uh 6 months ago, I was in the worst place of my life. And I'm not going to be retelling my sobriety story, but because I've told that so many times and that has been on my YouTube, I've talked about that on Instagram. But I'm just going to give just a couple key points. So 6 months ago was the beginning of my sobriety. 6 months ago, or I guess 6.5 months ago, I hit rock bottom. I was in my therapist's office, like my head against the back of the couch, tears streaming down my face, and she just goes, "You've hit rock bottom." And that's when I knew stuff needed to change. I had never been that miserable in my life. I had never had so many panic attacks, so much anxiety, so much depression. I've never hated my life so much than 6 months ago. I smoked so much weed for all of my issues, and which meant that once I couldn't because it was making me so sick, that was when I had to really experience real emotions. I didn't know how to handle anxiety before. I didn't know how to cope because all I would do was numb the pain. And so having to experience those emotions raw, and it was just so intense for me, especially with the borderline coming on top of that. Everything felt like they always compare borderline to having third-degree burns, like where the tiniest touch will just make you feel so much. So with that, I started just some outpatient treatment, bunch of different therapies. It was a long, intensive program. There was dialectical behavioral therapy, DBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, acceptance and commitment therapy, like stuff talking about anger, and then it was like a dual diagnosis type treatment. And so there was also like relapse prevention and stuff like that. And so I would go every day, come home, and just like journal about it usually. And I do have that journal not with me right now. Maybe another podcast I'll go over that. But and so this, let's see. So I started doing all these therapies that I just never thought I would ever do. And it was just crazy. It was weird to be going to this place every day and learning almost too much about myself. But anyway, I don't want to get into the program too much. It was just a very intensive outpatient program. And I really did learn so much about myself. And it's crazy. And like I'm being very vague right now. But at the beginning, it the first 30 days were the hardest 30 days of my life. Truly, honestly. And like I said that during, and I still say that now because it really was the hardest time of my life. Because I was, like I said, I was learning almost too much about myself, and it was scary, like stuff I didn't want to uncover. And then, so my sobriety started. The first 30 days was a bunch of different therapies. Went to a bunch of anonymous meetings, and those were scary. I tried different types of meetings. I tried Narcotics Anonymous, NA, and then Marijuana Anonymous, MA. Narcotics Anonymous was the first NA meeting I ever went to, and that was first anonymous meeting I ever went to, and that was terrifying, that meeting, because it was my first one, and the people that go there usually are sober from hard drugs, like what you would think of when you think of narcotics. And so it was just scary to see not the people, but just the situations that were described, because they can get a lot more violent and a lot more scary. But anyway, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. I guess I'll just kind of bullet point the different things I learned about myself. So I'll start with, there's something in DBT called wise mind, and that is basically where you want to be. It's a Venn diagram, and it's on one end, it's emotion mind, which is when you act impulsively, you act on your emotions, you think of the now, you don't care about the future, you have a sense of urgency. And then there's the other end, which is rational mind or reasonable mind. And that's when you just use facts, you put emotions aside, and that's how you make your decisions. So as many of you can allude, like I spend most of my life in emotion mind, or at least I did, but I was never able to identify that. And so I really learned about when I'm in emotion mind and what I usually do when I'm in that time. So I always noticed that, this sounds very dark, but when I was in emotion mind, my life was over and I felt like I wanted to die. I would have these just spiraling thoughts where I'm like, this is happening, which means I'm never going to do this. This is over. This is happening. And there's a lot of never ever, a lot of extremes, a lot of black and white thinking. And so when I start spiraling like that, I'm like, okay, Allie, you're in emotion mind. And that's when I start to use either some of the skills or I'll distract myself. One of my big things is called TIP. And I talked about this in one of my sobriety update videos, where it's, my thing is temperature. So I'll take like a cold shower, or I'll use an ice pack. And one of the biggest things with DBT and skills is, when I first started, when I was upset and someone said, well, have you tried using a skill? I would want to smack them across the face. Like, no, just fix me. I don't want to have to use a skill. I don't want to have to work for this. And now, like, I've learned all the different skills. And yeah, there are some that I don't find effective. There are some that I don't want to say are stupid, but for me are just useless. And so I had to learn that when learning these skills, there are going to be some that aren't helpful, and that's okay. But you just have to find the ones that are helpful and use those. So there's that. And then I learned a lot about my willpower. I was always very, I don't even know how to say this. I gave in very easily. I didn't have a lot of willpower. I would always just, like I said, just give in. And so I learned that I can stop myself from doing things if I know what's right. Like, I never thought I would be able to be 6 months sober. Are you kidding me? When I was smoking, I couldn't imagine being 6 days sober, sometimes even 6 hours sober. And so it was so hard for me to imagine not smoking again. And that kind of gets me to my next point, which is future tripping, which is like, people ask me all the time on Instagram, do I think I'm ever going to smoke again? And I say, I don't know. Like, I'm taking things one day at a time. I really am. I am focused on being sober for today, and tomorrow I can worry about tomorrow. But today, all I'm going to focus on is today. And that was hard to begin, because I would always think about the future. I don't want, like, I like things planned. It's part of my personality. I like to know what's going to happen and when. And so it's hard to not know what the future holds. Like, yeah, I'd love to be able to smoke again, but I can't think about that. I can't be like, okay, in X amount of years, I'm going to be able to smoke again. That's just not how it is, especially because it makes me sick. And so it's not an easy thing to think about. So that's why I just have to focus on the present, and can't focus on the past, can't ruminate on that. I can't change that. Radical acceptance is one of the biggest parts of my recovery, both sobriety related and mental health, because I have to focus on what I can change, and that's usually not the past. One of my favorite parts of sobriety is the serenity prayer, which is, oh gosh, I'm blanking. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. I lived off of that for my sobriety. So grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. There are things that I can't change, and if I can't accept that, it's going to be just useless. to get upset about it, because there's nothing I can do to change that. So why waste time getting upset about that? Again, easier said than done. Like, if there's a breakup that I can't change, like, I'm gonna get, or a death, I'm gonna go a little more extreme. If there is a death, someone died, you can't change that. And it doesn't mean that you can't be upset about it. You're gonna be upset about it. But it's just, there's also a sense of radical acceptance in there, where you have to accept that that person is gone. It, like I said, it doesn't mean you have to just move on with your life. And like I said, I'm taking this to extreme measures, but the metaphor I always use is, if you get stabbed, like, people would always say, wow, people are going to be really confused when I tell this story. When I was beginning my sobriety and in these different programs, I was miserable. And the leaders and the people there would say to me, well, you can choose to be miserable, or you can choose to just do the program. And for me, I'm like, well, if you get stabbed, you can choose not to be miserable, but it's still gonna fucking hurt. And like, that's how I think of a lot of things. It's hard to say to like, it's hard to hear you're choosing to be miserable, because that just makes me think I'm putting it on myself, which is definitely not true. Yes, my addiction and a lot of my issues, I don't want to say I blame myself, but have a lot to do with me. And a lot of it is my mindset. But that's not something that you can change easily. It's not a broken bone you can put a cast on and just get rid of and heal. It's something that takes a lot of time. And that's another thing that I love. What is it? Like, healing takes time. Progress, not perfection. That's what it is. You need to have time, like, give yourself time. This stuff like this, recovering from stuff like this, is not going to just happen overnight. It's not going to happen in a week. It's probably not going to even happen in a month. It's something that takes time. So you have to focus on the progress you've made and not trying to be perfect and completely healed. Otherwise, you're just going to drive yourself crazy. Let's see what else there is. I finally, so I was going to individual therapy after this long program, individual therapy once a week. And now I moved to every other week, because I just don't have enough to talk about if it's once a week, which is definitely a big thing, because, I would have so much to talk about when I would go once a week, because I always had so many issues. And like, that's not a bad thing, but now I just feel like my life is finally moving in the direction that I want, and I'm happy about it. One thing that's kind of taboo for people to talk about, but I'm completely open about it, is medication. People always say, do you think like it's medication, or do you think you need therapy? And I definitely think you need both. You can't be successful in therapy if you don't have the right mindset. If your brain chemistry is off, it's not possible sometimes to be successful in therapy. Some people may disagree with that, but this is my opinion. And so I do take different medications for my, again, issue. I don't want to say issues, for the abnormalities maybe in my brain chemistry. So I've been on Zoloft for years. I'm not going to give the dosage. That's not important. And that is, I've been on Lexapro. I've tried Prozac. I've tried all the different ones. Zoloft works the best for me. And then I take Concerta for my ADD. I tried Adderall a while ago, but at the end of the day, I was just miserable, because I wouldn't eat during the day because I wasn't hungry, and so I'd have no energy and I'd just be miserable. Concerta definitely helps a lot better than Adderall, and that's just my opinion. I like it better. And then let's see, what else do I take? One of my newer medications is called gabapentin, and gabapentin is one of the most amazing things for me. I think of it as, it's bad to say, like a tiny, tiny Xanax, but it's not. Like, I've never done Xanax, but I can take it up to 4 times a day, every 4 hours as needed. And it's a nerve relaxer. It's usually for seizures or epileptic people. But for me, and it's also prescribed for anxiety, and it helps with cravings for addiction. And so taking this, like, sometimes I will go and I will feel like so anxiety riddled, and things will be so bad, and I'll be like, okay, I haven't taken my GABA in a while. And so that's definitely one of the most helpful things. Yeah, so that's my medication, and then my therapy. I'm just doing like I don't want to say straight up DBT right now. And it's weird, because I felt like I was doing so much for my recovery in the very beginning, and it's honestly needed. And it's, like I said, it's still the hardest part of my life. I might just be repeating myself, but I'm just trying to think of what else I've learned about myself. Like really looking, the way that I can learn about myself is by looking back. And so I'll look back at where I was. I remember like the last time I smoked so like because I knew it was the last time. And I think I mentioned this in something. I don't remember what it was, but it's like when you break up with someone, how you're like, I didn't know the last time we kissed was going to be the last time. Well, I wanted to know that it was going to be the last time. So I smoked and I sat outside and I really like took it all in. And then I ended up smoking once more that my parents didn't know about. And that was May 31st. And so my sobriety date is June 1st, 2019. December 1st will be 6 months. And like I've said that more than once, obviously, but it's just surreal. And people come to me all the time and some people will come at me and say, I can't believe you're hating on weed. Like it's done so much for me. And that is not at all what I am doing. Like I said, I wish I could smoke weed. It helped me in many different ways. And I know it can help people in so many ways, but unfortunately, my body just doesn't like it. It makes me sick. And so many more people have come to me being like, wow, like I have cannabinoid hyperemesis too. Like, thank you for sharing your story. And I'm not even trying to get people to stop smoking weed. Like that's not my goal. I'm not trying to be like, oh, all you people need to realize you have an addiction. No, like, but people have come to me saying, you made me realize I had a problem. And so that doesn't necessarily mean they need to quit, but maybe if it might make them cut back, it might make them more successful in life. And then there's other people who can't be successful without smoking, and that's okay too. It's all dependent on the person. I still don't know how long I'm going to make these podcasts. This one's probably going to be about 20 minutes because I'm at almost 17 minutes. And yeah, I really was quite jumbled with this, but I just wanted to see if I like podcasting, and I kind of do. I'm just sitting here in my chair, just talking and really going through what's on my mind. And I like it, honestly. I don't know if I'm ever going to film myself during this because right now I'm just doing a voice recording to focus on my voice. But I don't know if I'll make a separate channel. I'll probably just put this on my main channel. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've learned. And it's insane what's happened to me in the past 6 months. I've completely changed my page. I've made myself I've thought about giving up so many times. I'm like, people don't care about me anymore now that I don't smoke weed. Like that was how I built my platform. But there's been so many of the sweetest people who have stuck around and be like, I follow you because of you and not because you smoke. And that's just the sweetest thing. And it warms my heart. So if you're one of those people, thank you so much. I love you all so, so, so much. You guys make my day. You make me happy. You're all my best friends. And I can't thank you enough for all the support you've given me throughout this time and throughout my entire Instagram and YouTube journey. So thank you guys for listening to this podcast. If you got here, if you have any other ideas for things you want me to talk about, whether it's like celebrities or anything like of a less serious note, or even things even more serious, let me know in the comments, DM me on Instagram, just let me know. Thank you guys so much, like I said, for everything, and I'll see you guys next time.